Hey, it's Daddy Steve. Please like and subscribe. Please click on the Deck Heroes icon. Click on subscribe. It's 100% free. Blood in, blood out. And don't forget to click on the notification just so you don't miss any amazing content. Alright, so just watched this. I watched about half of it and I thought I've got to do a video. There's quite a lot of important topics that Orange Friend touches on. One of those is who started the war between Ukraine and Russia? Is it good that Trump has forced Europe to step up on its obligations, the things that it signed up to? There's lots of grey area in there. I think we'll all agree on things to a certain point, but not like outcomes. You know, there may well be a little bit of debate on that. It's all very interesting, and so we all want world peace. It will be interesting. Just stick with it. Let's go.
We're going to be discussing a lot of things. Obviously, we'll be discussing what's happening with respect to Ukraine and Russia. At this moment, we have people talking in Russia. We have representatives over there, Steve Witkoff and others, and they're in very serious discussions. As you know, Ukraine has agreed, subject to this, what's happening today, to a complete ceasefire, and we hope Russia will do the same. Thousands of people are being killed, young people, usually, mostly young people. We were just talking about it. Thousands of young people are being killed a week, and we want to see that stop. And they're not Americans, and they're not from the Netherlands for the most part. They're from...
Okay, just before he goes on, Ukraine has already signed up to the ceasefire. We're just waiting to see on whether Russia is going to follow suit. It's either a yes or a no, right? It's a yes or a no, and I know there's conditions there. So really what we're going to be looking at, it's not going to be answered in this press conference, I don't believe, is what happens next in terms of how much rope, how much time does America give Russia to not also meet in the middle about this ceasefire?
I must say, Trump 45, you originated the fact that in Europe you're now spending, when you take it to aggregate, 700 billion more on defense than when you came in office in 2016, 2017. But that was Trump 45. But then when you look at Trump 47, what happened the last couple of weeks is really staggering. The Europeans committing to a package of 800 billion defense spending. The Germans now, potentially up to $500 billion extra in defense spending. And then, of course, you had Keir Starmer here, the British Prime Minister, and others, all committing to much higher defense spending. We're not there. We need to do more. But I really want to work together with you in a run-up to the The Hague Summit to make sure that we will have a NATO which is really reinvigorated under your...
So before we go any further, he just mentioned two things. Europe was not contributing, and it was taking the pee out of the US and letting the US lead the way. I mean, the US wanted to lead the way. You know what I mean? So it's either going to be listen, this is the two sides of the coin here, right? So number one, yes, Europe should have paid more towards its own defense as well as global stability, right? That's one thing. The other thing is that the US was more than happy to do it until about a month ago. So that's the other side of the coin, because the US is more powerful and safer in terms in when it's not isolated. Okay, so you got two ways to look at it. US is over there, isolated and having no real kind of impact on any decisions affecting the world. So who is to direct the world, basically, in terms of being favourable to the US and being reliant on the US? And that's where he gets his relevance and importance from. But if you don't rely on it, and you don't really need it, and you haven't got true allies because they're not reliant on you, then is the US less safe or more safe? And if you've got these independent states, you know, Europe, if Europe is in reliance upon itself, doesn't need the US, is Europe potentially an enemy to the US? Or is it a friend? You know what I mean? So listen, you can roll that dice and just see what happens next. But we've gone from something what it was to what it is. So technically, you can say, well, now the Europe's spending more on defense towards global stability. But when you really think about what that means is, so okay, the UK needs to redevelop and invest in its nuclear, in terms of its armies, in terms of its weaponry. So that's what we've done. Is the world more safe now? France, that needs to redevelop its nuclear. It needs to invest in its army, have more troops on the ground and invest in its weapons. Is the world more safe now? Well, what about Spain? Isn't that going to be exactly the same? It needs to acquire, maybe it thinks it needs to acquire nuclear now. So we're going to have more nations, you would think now, that think, damn, do we need to acquire a nuclear capability? Is more countries, and this is going against the theories beyond a month ago, is the world safe with nuclear proliferation between countries? Yes or no? Because that's the inevitable. Is the world more safe with everybody arming up to the teeth? And that's a yes or no. Is the world more safe with more countries investing in weapons, needing to have weapons, and actually investing in those weapons and being ready to go? Or was it safer a month ago? You know what I mean? So, and one thing's for sure, that money that could have been spent on whatever you want to spend it on, education, on health, on, humanitarian things, there's going to be less money to help the people who actually need to be helped. So, there's more equality in the world because it's been spent on weapons now, right? But for example, in the UK, money that literally would have gone to aid is now going to go to our defence. And it's logically sound. But at the end of the day, there's people who need that help are not going to get it. So listen, again, at the root of it, it may seem that it has sense that Europe fills its commitments that it signed up for. So yeah, tick that box. But the offshoot, the outcome is going to be nuclear proliferation, more armies, and potentially more people ready to go to war. The other side of the coin is we need that. We need that, and if we can't rely on America to do it, to push back Russia, our main enemy, which evidently we can't do, and at the end of the day, we need to just buy some time until we can actually get these things up and running. Like he just said, 800 million is going to be spent by Europe in order to try and get up and running. Now, Russia, do we really think it's not doing deals with North Korea? Do we really think it's not doing deals with China, and it's doing more or less, I don't know, better than what we think? Very likely, and there may well be other countries as well. But nevertheless, it's not going to it's not going to have anywhere near as much money as Europe. But then again, it may well prioritise the money that it does have into military things, and that's very likely because they exist in order to increase their spread of influence of Russia. And to be honest, if they follow through with that plan over infinite time and they acquire everything, then they've succeeded, and that is their plan. It's to march forward as quick as they can, and they're making ridiculously quick gains under Trump instead of pushing them back, which is another thing as well. Instead of pushing them back, he's encouraging them. He's kind of giving them a win in war. That's basically what Trump's done, and now he can draw a line and say, well, actually, no, we're going to threaten this land that we've just stolen, and those resources, those rare earth minerals and whatever else they managed to grab, been legitimized until it happens again. And happens again, they kind of tiptoe towards Poland and Finland and all those other countries, and then they've got a decision to make whether they switch sides to Russia or they believe in that kind of European alliance. They can't rely on NATO. And we've already got Hungary kind of siding with Russia in terms of the votes in dealing with that Ukraine-Russia war. Dangerous times. The land, which is much more important than what it seemed and what even I thought about until Trump came in and made it a big issue. The most important land right now, the front lines of the war, is Ukraine. It is Ukraine. And we have to draw lines and we have to guarantee their security. And one of the best things, hopefully, that would happen, which is never going to happen, and we will see a little bit later, is Russia's obviously saying that it's not going to agree to peace, right? Now, if in true strength, what should happen is, listen, we've given you an opportunity for peace, you don't want it, bang, there you go. Ukraine is under United Nations now. We try to play fair with you. As long as you play fair, there's not an issue. You overstep these lines, this is a United Nations line now. And what I'm really saying is, they're going to march right up to the edge of Poland, which is a United Nations country anyway, but they'll be stronger having taken Ukraine. And then they're right on our doorstep. We're going to be there anyway. So you might as well as draw that line at Ukraine. Let me know your thoughts. Anyway, let's go forwards.
And we are getting there. We also discuss defense production because we need to produce more weaponry. We are not doing enough. Not in the US, not in Europe, and we are lacking behind when you compare to the Russians and the Chinese. And you have a huge defense industrial base. Europeans buying 4 times more here than the other way around, which is good because you have a strong defense industry, but we need to do more there to make sure that we are hand-pot the production and kill the red tape. So I would love to work with you on that. And finally, Ukraine. You broke the deadlock. As you said, all the killing, The young people dying, cities getting destroyed. The fact that you did that you started the dialogue with the Russians, and the successful talks in Saudi Arabia now with the Ukrainians. I really want to commend you for this. So, The Hague is my hometown.
Listen, he's there as a diplomat. There's no success in it. There's no success in capitulation. There was success in having a strong line to Russia. Otherwise, they just take and take and take. This is a country, we haven't just met them today. We know where we stand with this man that's been in power for 25 years, Putin. And we know where we stand with Russia. And we know what they understand. And we know the approach. And we can pretend that it doesn't apply. And we can pretend that this orange man, this orange idiot, isn't giving too much away in how he's approached this thing from the get-go. But now it is a question of what does he do next now in the eyes of the world. It's obviously been failing from the start and it continued to fail. If Russia does not agree to that ceasefire, and what happens when they break it? When they break it, and what happens after the 30 days? You know what I mean? And whether there is actually some backstop for Ukraine, but we'll see a little bit later. I don't think that's going to happen. So this ceasefire is completely meaningless, other, in my opinion, than buying Europe a little bit more time to get ready. But then it's about those countries of the willing and how far they're going to go. We will see.
I love to host you there in the summer and work together to make sure that will be a splash, a real success, projecting American power on the world stage.
What Mark is saying is when I first went to NATO, my first meeting, I noticed that very few people were paying. And if they were, they weren't paying their fair share. There were only 7 countries that were paying what they were supposed to be paying, which was, yeah,
it's even worse.
Could be even worse. But there were just very few countries that were paying. And even the paying, it was at 2%, which is too low. It should be higher. It should be quite a bit higher. But you had Poland, and I remember Poland was actually paying a little bit more than they were supposed to, which I was very impressed with.
Listen, I'm glad you mentioned the 2% because I think in Trump's mind, you've got to think about the size of America in relation to other countries, right? How many times does the UK, I mean, UK is an exception. I think we're 6th biggest economy in the world, so you know what I mean. But anyway, you know, you got one of the biggest economies in the world. So 1% of the biggest economy in the world is going to be, it's always going to be bigger than its smaller countries and with smaller economies, of course. You know what I mean? But I think in Trump's mind, he's thinking, yeah, we're spending, let's say, $1 billion. And that little tiny fragment of a country, I'm not talking about the UK this time, in case you're wondering, you're spending like $500 million. It's like, well, you know, there's inequality, but it's all about the size of the economy and what's realistic. But I'm glad you mentioned the percentage because even, this is the thing that he's not wrong on. The percentage of the total economy which countries agreed to and they just didn't. That's the bit we agree on, but it's the outcomes and at what cost, even if he's correct, if it's the destabilization of the world order. It's like the ship goes down, everybody's dead, and at last breath, I told you so. And it's just head below water. Sorry. It's like last breath before the ship goes down, the Titanic. I told you so. Maybe he doesn't even get that last word out. Anyway, you were right in death. Thank you.
And they've been actually terrific in some of the others, but most of them weren't paying or they were paying very little. And I didn't think it was appropriate to bring it up there, but I said it's going to be brought up at my next meeting. And my next meeting, the first meeting, I want to give them a little break. The second meeting, it began, and I was able to raise hundreds of billions of dollars. I just said, we're not going to be involved with you if you're not going to pay. And the money started pouring in, and NATO became much stronger because of my actions and working along with a lot of people, including Mark. But they would not pay for other presidents, and I don't think other presidents.
I've got to jump in there. NATO has not become stronger. NATO is completely irrelevant and 100% weak. You can't rely on the unreliable. You've killed NATO. But what you have done is incentivize Europe to spend money that it would have spent on NATO on itself and in protection of self and its own interests. So you may well have built a bloc, which is, again, is hopefully a friend to America, possibly in the way that we thought that you was a friend to Europe right now against our major threat. We will see. There we go.
Even knew that they weren't paid. I asked, first question, has everybody paid up? And literally, I mean, they told me 7. You could be right, it could be 3, but that makes it even worse. But they just weren't paying. And I said, no, I won't protect if you're not paying. If you're delinquent or if the money isn't paid, why would we do that? And as soon as I said that, Got a little hit from the press because they said, oh, gee, that's not very nice. But if you said the other, nobody would have paid. And the money started coming in by the billions. And, hundreds of billions of dollars flowed into NATO, and NATO became strong. Yeah. And you remember that. Your predecessor, who I thought was a very good man.
Absolutely. Yeah, Stoltenberg. He sends his best greetings.
He was terrific. Stoltenberg, Secretary General. And he made the statement that when Trump came in, the money started coming in like we never saw before. Hundreds of billions, actually probably close to $600 billion came in. And NATO became strong from that standpoint. And now we have to use it wisely. And we have to get this war over with, and you'll be back to a normal, much more normal life. And maybe we're close. We're getting words that things are going okay in Russia, and it doesn't mean anything until we hear what the final outcome is. But they have very serious discussions going on right now with President Putin and others, and hopefully they all want to end this nightmare. It's a nightmare. It's a horrible thing. When you look, I get pictures every week. They give me the pictures of the battlefield, which I.
Before we go into the battlefield and say I have watched this through, half of it about. I've watched it about halfway through. Again, this is the point where if Russia does not play ball, when do you start showing your strength, Trump? Because at the moment, all you're doing is playing patty cakes with this dictator, and he's running all over you. And you almost seem like you're too scared to enforce the lines. You're too scared to do anything at all. Even Biden was slow to implement the things wisely, I think. We can only use certain missiles, you can do this, you can't do that, obviously it's theirs, and they're thinking about global stability. But having already gone through that, to reset to patty cakes, which is way behind what Biden was doing, you're doing nothing, my friend. Or you've opened up the intelligence channels again, oh, thank you very much, just for the Western stability, which includes you in the West, because we are your allies in Europe. But hopefully, again, I don't want to get there, but there has to be a solution, and it has to be a solution which guarantees the defence and the peace in the region, and that's not patty cakes. And you have to have a plan in there which equals peace, not just they take it for now and then they regroup and then they take more, then you're in the same position again, and it will all be down to you, Orange Man.
Don't want to see. It's so horrible to see young people laying arms and legs and heads laying all over the field. It's the most terrible thing that you'll ever see. And it's got to stop. These are young people with mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and friends, and it's got to stop. So we hopefully are going to be in a good position sometime today to have a good idea. We know where we are with Ukraine, and we are getting good signals outside of Russia as to where we are with Russia, and hopefully they'll do the right thing. It's really humanity. We're talking about humanity. We're not talking about the money. But then you add the money to it, and hundreds of billions of dollars is being spent and really wasted so unnecessarily. It should have never happened. So it's an honor to have you here. They picked a great gentleman. I'll tell you, I was so happy to hear, because you had somebody, Stoltenberg was really good, and you have somebody that's going to do an incredible job. And I was so much in favor of you.
So he's talking about humanity. He's the person that tied Ukraine's arms behind its back and said you're not going to have any intelligence, at the same time that Russia's bombarding it with missiles and blowing up civilian areas. So that's the lack of humanity. This probably could have been some of those bodies that you're talking about that are blown to bits unnecessarily. Anyway, let's go.
No idea. They had another person that I did not like. I was not happy. And I think I kept him from, you know what I'm talking about. I said, this is the right man to do it. And he really did. He was a great prime minister of the Netherlands. He did a great job.
Very interesting. It seemed that Trump just said there was a man, his predecessor on the left, that Trump wasn't happy. And he said, actually, I'm happy with this guy. Then that guy gets put in post. Now, that's exactly a movement towards the sycophants. I don't know about this guy on the left. I'm just going with what Trump just said. We've had a movement towards the yes men in all areas. That's exactly what this orange authoritarian leader wants, that he handpicks people that are going to agree with him. And if you handpick everybody and nobody can do anything to challenge your authority, welcome to authoritarianism. Very scary, and we've got to think about threats and where they likely come from. And we just need to be careful in Europe, and we need to be autonomous and looking after our own interests.
So with that, if anybody would have a question?
On Russia.
Please, sorry. Witkoff stripped him off, but you spoke about it. What sort of agreement do you hope he comes away from it with?
Well, we'd like to see a ceasefire from Russia. And we have, not been working in the dark. We've been discussing with Ukraine land, and pieces of land that would be kept and lost, and all of the other elements of a final agreement. There's a power plant involved, a very big power plant involved. Who's going to get the power?
I think they're talking about what will be in this peace settlement with Russia, and he's talking about, listen, you're not going to keep all your land. You're not going to keep all your land. So I'm in the UK. Say if they just gave away, I don't know. I don't want to annoy anybody. Say West London, they just happen to parachute down. Now they're there now. Orange Man comes over within 5 weeks. Now forget fighting. There you go. Russia's taking it or whatever. How well's that going to go down? How well is that going to do? Does that guarantee peace in the region? Of course it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. They've just been rewarded within 5 weeks with no backing. It's absolutely awful, and it's absolutely blatantly obvious that it shouldn't be, and it ain't going to work, and we'd still be fighting forever, right? Or whatever country. Say if they're in Rome, it's gone, it's now Russian. You're Madrid. Or wherever you want to say, now it's Russian just because I've had a fight over 3 years, and then this guy here is more or less guaranteeing that you've lost that land forever. You wouldn't have that fighting you? Of course you would. Of course you would. And they're not going to stop there. They're not going to stop there. So this whole negotiation here, unless it's robust, is meaningless. But it's not only meaningless, it's setting us backwards in terms of global stability and Western stability. And the only person who doesn't get it is this orange idiot. Damn.
Power plant, and who's going to get this and that. And so, it's not an easy process. But phase one is the ceasefire. A lot of the individual subjects have been discussed, though. We've been discussing concepts of land because you don't want to waste time with a ceasefire if it's not going to mean anything. So we're saying, look, this is what you can get, this is what you can't get. They discussed NATO and being in NATO, and everybody knows what the answer to that is. They've known that answer for 40 years, in all fairness. A lot of the...
Very important. He didn't say no, but if they knew that answer... Again, there's many times when it doesn't guarantee the security or the defense of Ukraine to make any of this meaningful. None of it's meaningful without the backstop. It's what's known as the backstop. And they're not going to guarantee it in NATO. Now, America is NATO, effectively. You know what I mean? So, okay, all these things that are happening, the European nations can't do anything. They can't do anything, don't have the forces. The country that can, won't, right? So the UN is effectively America, and America's doing nothing. That's what he just answered.
Details of a final agreement have actually been discussed. Now we're going to see whether or not Russia's there, and if they're not, it'll be a very disappointing moment for the world. Yeah.
Vladimir Putin just said he is open to a ceasefire, but he does still have some concerns. He suggested that you two should speak directly. Do you have plans to speak to him soon? If so, when? Are you confident you can get this across the finish?
Sure. He did say that today. It was a very promising statement because other people are saying different things, and you don't know if they have anything to really, if they have any meaning, or I don't know. I think some of them were making statements. I don't think they have anything to do with it. No, he put out a very promising statement, but it wasn't complete. And yeah, I'd love to meet with him or talk to him, but we have to get it over with fast. Every day people are being killed. It's not like, as we sit here, 2 people will be killed. Think of it. 2 people are going to be killed during this little period of time. Thousands of people a week are dying. So we really don't have very much time. We have to make this fast. It shouldn't be very complicated.
Mr. President, a representative of Canada, the finance minister, are in town and will meet members of your administration during the day. Any chances that you will ban on the tariffs on aluminum and the ones that are planned for April 2nd?
No.
You are not going to change your
No,
mind?
not. Look, we've been ripped off for years, and we're not going to be ripped off anymore. No, I'm not going to bend at all. Aluminum or steel or cars. We're not going to bend. We've been ripped off as a country for many, many years. We've been subjected to costs that we shouldn't be subjected to. In the case of Canada, we're spending $200 billion a year to subsidize Canada. I love Canada. I love the people of Canada. I have many friends in Canada. The great one.
Let's just look at that. I had to research it. They're spending $200 billion a year to subsidise Canada. Now, I've done, as I said, I've gone on the line, I've done a little bit of trawling. The US in no way spends $200 billion subsidising Canada. Potentially, he's talking about a trade deficit. And that trade deficit relates to oil. I think it's unrefined oil that it gets from Canada, but that's because it wants and needs it. You know what I mean? I think it's in relation to the deal that he negotiated in his first term. So that's why it's there. But if we take the oil out, then the report I read, I think it was 38 billion deficit to Canada. 38 billion is absolutely zero to the US. But again, essentially, there's no practical way that the US literally or actually subsidizes Canada, the country, for 200 billion. Maybe it's trade, but even that is just all bullshit.
Wayne Gretzky, the great. How good is Wayne Gretzky? He's the great one. But we have, I know many people from Canada that are good friends of mine. But, you know, the United States can't subsidize a country for $200 billion a year. We don't need their cars. We don't need their energy. We don't need their lumber. We don't need anything that they get. We do it because we want to be helpful. But it comes a point when you just can't do that. You have to run your own country. And to be honest with you, Canada only works as a state. It doesn't. We don't need anything they have. As a state, it would be one of the great states anyway. This would be the...
This is very important what he's going to say now. This is very important what he's saying. What he's already said, Canada would work as a state. He's talking about a sovereign country of Canada. They've already said they don't want to be a state. And he keeps on saying it, and he keeps on saying it, and keeps on saying it. Now, where is this conversation going to go? Where is this conversation going to end? We don't know. But this orange idiot's got a plan. And I believe it's going to be seizing land. Now, Canada's on the doorstep, and there's also Greenland. Greenland's got resources. We will see. We will see.
Most incredible country visually. If you look at a map, they drew an artificial line right through it between Canada and the U.S. Just a straight artificial line. Somebody did it a long time ago, many, many decades ago, and makes no sense. It's so perfect as a great and cherished state. Keeping "O Canada," the national anthem. I love it.
When he keeps talking about that line that's drawn between the countries, you know what he's talking about is, yes, there's a line, but it might make more sense if we land grab this, we land grab that. Surely, he's not going to be saying that, well, actually, there is a line there, but Canada really should take big chunks of those states that lie directly below. We know he's not talking about that. He's talking about starting off with a land grab and trying to change the history from way back, which he acknowledges, and then going from there. Similar to this whole Putin plan we're seeing in Ukraine. Disgusting.
I think it's great. Keep it. But it'll be for the state, one of our greatest states. Maybe our greatest state. But why should we subsidize another country for $200 billion? It costs us $200 billion a year. And again, we don't need their lumber. We don't need their energy. We have more than they do. We don't need anything. We don't need their cars. I'd much rather make the cars here. And there's not a thing that we need. Now, there'll be a little disruption, but it won't be very long. But they need us. We really don't need them. And we have to do this. I'm sorry, we have to do this, yes.
They have to do it. They have to do it. He's just made a direct threat. To me, that's a direct threat against Canada, that they are going to bring that within, whether they like it or not. And there will be some minimal disruption. But either way, I think he's already decided what's going to happen.
Sir, how does this new transatlantic cooperation, how do you envision it?
Well, we have, that's one thing. I mean, you know, we're on the other side of the ocean. And they're right there. And yet we're in for $350 billion because of Biden, and they're in for $100 billion. So it's a big difference. And it's unfair. And I said, you have to equalize. They should equalize. They should have. It should have never happened where Biden just gave.
And again, as I've done this in a very recent video, I think the US spent about 124, 128 billion. Most definitely, I think Europe spent 138 billion. Just facts. Facts.
This money away. Now, as you know, we have an agreement with Ukraine on the rare earths and other things, and that'll get us something back, a lot back. It'll get us our money back. We're not doing it for that, though. I'm just doing this to get the war stopped. I'm doing it really to save lives, but at the same time.
No. You should be supporting the Ukraine in terms of world peace, because the dictator Russia will march throughout the West Europe. Once he's done that, he'll be coming for you in the States. We've had this before with the Nazis trying to global domination. Now he got it with Russia, but you just don't see it. That's the thing. You know, you spend 100 odd billion, whatever, was it $500 billion? Like a $500 billion deal on these resources, which extorts a country that's currently under war, otherwise known as Ukraine. Well done. Well done.
We were treated very unfairly, as we always are by every country. And we're in for very substantially more than the European nations are in for. And that shouldn't be, you know, they're much more affected by it than we are, because we do have an ocean in between.